It's time to down tools for a bit. Welcome to the ToolShed, the influential podcast for anyone and everyone involved in the building industry. Here's your host, Mick Hawes.
Hey there, before we kick off, I want to share a really important thought. 71% of you who watch this channel frequently don't subscribe. So if you've enjoyed any video you've ever watched, can you do me a favor and hit the subscribe button? It helps the channel more than you think, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests get. So let's go. Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the ToolShed Podcast. In this episode, we have a repeat offender. His name's Martin Cattach, Finance for Business. Martin was on the podcast a fair while ago. In fact, in the intro, I just spotted him in the intro when he was on the podcast initially. I think a year or so has gone past since then, but really looking forward to catching up and talking about a very, very important topic in business, particularly in the building industry, and that is finance and all things money. Before we get started, I just wanted to encourage you to fill out the Builder's Scorecard. So in the description, there is a link. And if you fill out the Builder's Scorecard, you just click the link, answer a few questions. It will identify where potentially the weak link in your business is. And it's very difficult to identify that when you're so close to the coalface. But just 90 seconds answering a few questions, it will give you a score in each of the four essential areas of your business. And you will receive that score through the email. You will also receive a bunch of suggestions based on your score as to what you can do to start to improve that score. And when you start to identify what that little key issue is in your business that's kind of holding you back, it's a bit like the opening the dam walls. A whole bunch of other problems disappear and don't trouble you anymore after you fix that one problem. So it's a very cool way to quite quickly make some forward progress in your business. Martin Cattach, there he is. You look a little different to what you did when you were on the podcast a little while ago. I just saw your face flash up in the intro. You had a big set of headphones on. It might have been that. How are you? And what's been going on since we saw you last?
Good afternoon, Mick, and it's great to be back here again. I don't know, 12 months, I suppose. I've got a little older, and working with finance in the construction industry, I suppose I've got a little grayer as well. Mm-hmm. They tend to go both together. But look, I'm finding that business is good and things tend to be lifting. Look, I've been working a lot in the commercial construction industry, and it has been relatively strong for the last 12, 18 months. But just now I'm beginning to see residential buildings start to improve. I'm seeing a lot more work in that sort of space, but I'm also seeing a better quality of builder. I suppose one of the things that's happened in the industry is that there has been a bit of a clean out with the tight market we faced, and I'm seeing some bright young builders, often people that come to mind are ex-project managers from Porter Davis and so forth, that have gone out into the building industry, but not going into the building industry in the classic way of saying, I'm going to become a builder and look, I've built that, but tackling it from a very much a project management and business perspective, so that what they look at is the contracts they enter into, how they can professionally reduce costs, maintain quality, and basically be competitive in current market.
Yeah, that's really encouraging to hear, because one of the biggest challenges that I think we face, or I've noticed over the years with Builder's Business Black Belt, is trying to drag the builder kicking and screaming into some sort of professional mindset, because they've never really seen themselves as professional. They've been doing free quotes, giving away their time, their intellectual property experience and knowledge for nothing, not valuing themselves. And now you're seeing builders coming in, and some of the older builders are the pennies dropping, and they're starting to be far, far more professional. But, you're in the business of finance. What are some of the things that you're seeing that somebody listening to this needs to start to take notice of in their business? What are some of the errors or some of the challenges that you're helping builders, either in the commercial space or the residential space, overcome by helping them understand the financial side of things differently, making sure they've got, the appropriate amount of finance behind them, etc.?
Yeah. Look, one of the things that I've done several $1 million worth of recently is a thing called trade finance. And this is a situation where, believe it or not, a lending institution provides you funds to pay your bills, which is a really good thing, or basically extends your credit terms. See, one of the problems in most businesses, and particularly in construction, is what I call the cash gap.
Mm.
And the cash gap is simply the time where you pay for your materials and labor. Generally, materials, say 30 days, labor every 7 days. But you don't get paid by the builder, master builder, or the client, as I prefer to call them, because they can be several people,
Mm.
until 30, 60 days later.
Yeah.
So this causes this problem of cash gap. And so often I hear businesses talk about, oh, I've got a cash flow problem. I've got a cash flow problem. It isn't really a cash flow problem. It's a liquidity problem.
Mm.
They didn't have enough money in the business to start with.
Yeah.
So there's an equation that's what I call the time value of money. So you run out of money the longer the time it is to get paid. So simply having more liquidity or having an ability to extend your supplier terms means that critical materials, I've got a concreter where concrete and Rio are his principal requirements, but he has to pay for them 30 days, sometimes 15, and his clients are paying him 45 or 60 days. So you get this gap, and it's what causes a lot of pain in many businesses, including construction, where something like trade finance is a facility that basically, when you settle with your supplier, and let's say it's Rio for my concreter, he has to pay for that at 30 days. He uses a trade finance facility that pays his supplier at 30 days, but he doesn't have to pay the lender back to 90 days. So what we've done there is extended his trading terms so that he can deal with the cash gap he faces by not getting paid for 45 days after he's done the work.
Mhm.
So trade finance is one of the things I use to solve the cash gap problem. And it can be a little bit simpler than what debtor finance is on the other side, because there are two sides to the ledger. You've got your suppliers on one side and you've got your debtors on the other. And this bit in between is that gap. And you can either extend your trading terms or extend the position with your debtors. Either one will help solve that liquidity problem in the business.
So I know part of what you do is developing strategy, funding strategies, but the mindset and the thinking around it. And I'm just thinking that there's stuff that you would have to help your clients with as far as their strategic thinking, from the perspective that I guess where my mind went was that old statistic of lotto winners when they've won the lotto. The statistic is something like almost all people who win the lotto 5 years later are far worse off financially than what they were before they won the money, because they don't know how to handle the money. And obviously what we're not talking about is you just go borrow money to get you out of the shit. You've got to have a strategic objective and think strategically about using somebody else's money to move you forward. What are the things that you talk about with your clients to help them be able to come up with a strategy? What are the things that you're teaching them with their mind?
Some of the things, and look, I've got to use my largest commercial builder rang me a couple of weeks ago, and he's employed a team of contract administrators, and he says they are his most valuable asset. And he rang me one Saturday morning, said, "Look, I'm about to employ one," and the salary was astronomical.
Mm.
And he said, "I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, but when I look at the money they're saving me by squeezing every dollar out of a construction contract, it's what I should be doing." So the first thing is, when it comes to a project, you've got to have a really good look and see how much you can make out of this project.
Mm.
You know, and I don't like to use the term, but what corners can be cut. And in those things, it means, can we use more people, better quality subbies that will mean we don't get callbacks? There are many, many things that make a contract properly executed retain the profit margin you need. So it's really about initially looking at what the project is, and then uh, how to fund that project in the most effective way. And because I work in that working capital space, these are the tools that I use to help people keep their project on track and enable slippage, because, it's a contingency. You don't know how long, what's going to go wrong on the project, how it's going to be held up. So you need to have some facilities available, but very much one of the things that I find can be a bit of an issue when all of a sudden you take the cash flow pressure off. In other words, you put in either debtor finance or something like trade finance. That means there's a lot more liquidity in the business. It doesn't mean you don't have to chase up getting paid.
Mm.
One of the things that I find, often when liquidity comes in and everyone's been under such pressure to, make every dollar count, and all of a sudden I give the business additional liquidity, you can't take your foot off those collection type areas. And, doing trade finance or doing debtor finance, I use the expression, it's a one trick pony. You can only do it once.
Mm.
So we can extend all your supplier terms. Yeah, that's great. Or we can turn your debtors into cash faster. Yeah, that's great. But how are you going to apply that cash, and where is that going to increase the returns in the business, or just take the pressure off a contract you shouldn't be in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. On your website, one of the things that you do, it talks about responsive finance solutions, and again, I think when you talk about business finance or financing your business, the brain goes back to a line of credit or a bank loan or something like that. And the way that you do things, as I understand it, is very different. One of the things on your website, you say, it says, it frees your business from the straitjacket of old-fashioned, inflexible bank business loans. So just explain the how the old-fashioned version works versus using more of a strategic approach like you help your clients. Hey, I hope you're enjoying the podcast. We're always trying to bring you information that's going to make your life as a builder much easier. So give us a thumbs up and make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the next episode.
Well, particularly the old-fashioned business loan wasn't designed for the business. It was designed for the bankers. Okay, and as they do. And so what's the banker do? It turns around and let's just use, it could be $1 million, but let's say we'll give you $100,000, just to make the mental arithmetic simple. And you'll pay that back over 5 years, and we'll take a mortgage over your property to make sure we're secured. And for some reason, if you were borrowing it for your home mortgage, I think in current market it might cost you 6%.
Yeah.
But because it's a business loan, it's 8%. Don't really know what that extra 2% is, because the security is identical.
Well, the bank's Christmas fund, I guess.
Exactly. And so what we have is we have a continual payback at a given amount. Let's say it's $2,000 a month. Just to make it nice and simple. So we're paying that back, but it doesn't take into account changes and things that occur in the business that could be very different to that, and it doesn't enable you to scale. You see, one of the things with current funding from the banks is you have to go and put in an application, wait maybe 6 weeks for them to tell you no, and you haven't got the flexibility that you need to do things in business. So when I talk about responsive finance, I'm talking about, well, let's look away from that traditional bank lending. Firstly, I like to see the business secure its debts against the business assets. So that's one of the important things that we need to look at, because as we saw in the turbulence and problems we've had in the last 3 or 4 years, a lot of people have leveraged their residential property, which is where we keep mum and the kids, or dad and the kids, because I don't want to be sexist, safe, and we're risking it all with the business, and maybe the bank will take it back, and I have seen that happen. So the situation, if you can look at securing any funding you do over the project that you're doing,
Mm.
or using assets you have within the business to secure it, that's the first rule, because that security issue is the one that can come back and bite you on the bum.
Mm.
The second one is you need flexible things. Now, the new fintechs provide things like unsecured overdrafts. They do them up to $250,000.
Mm.
So you can actually get an unsecured overdraft. Now, admittedly, their rates are not like the bank. The bank's going to charge you between 12 and 15. They're going to charge you more like 19 and 20, but they're not going to take a mortgage over your property. They're going to secure it just on your signature and on your cash flow, because the way modern lending goes, the banks have traditionally always done this, but the new fintechs, and this is whether it's debtor, trade, or an unsecured overdraft, they look at your cash flow by taking a link to your bank. So quite easily, they put in a system where they can have read-only access to your bank account. It's standard on all credit applications these days. And no matter what the financials tell, the real story is what we see in the bank balance. They see all the good and all the bad. So I've had clients that were looking good, have great credit ratings, but a current check on their bank shows that they've had 6 missed payments in the last 2 or 3 months. And it's not quite like bouncing checks. It was just like insufficient funds. And that basically destroys their credit application. So you've got to realize your conduct within your bank account is one of the most important things you need to keep an eye on.
Yeah. Yeah. Good advice. So somebody listening to this, perhaps wanting to explore options, is what you do, Martin, the right direction for them to go? And I want to come back to, like, if they decide to reach out to you, what their experience is. But maybe they're thinking, my accountant gives me all of this sort of advice. Why would I reach out to someone like Martin and your business, Finance for Business? What's the difference?
Look, I mainly work with accountants most of the time, and they call me in to solve short to medium term cash flow problems. I suppose, look, it depends what your accountant's like. I can name 10 great accountants, and particularly 3 or 4 that come to mind in construction that are absolutely excellent, that I work with and understand the construction business. But I find a lot of people in the industry have accountants, and let's call them legacy accountants, that they've picked up, whether it was dad's accountant or whatever the arrangement was. And sometimes they don't know enough about the traps of the construction industry. And sometimes they're a bit caught in the old, let's do a bank loan type style, and don't realize the new and flexible finance products that are out there that could be of use. So I suppose that, look, I always think your accountant is your trusted advisor, and he should be part of the equation. But when it comes to finance, it's critical to your business. It's a bit like going to a doctor. I think I'm good at giving what I call second opinions. Here's an alternative. It may be the better way to go. And all circumstances, there are often multiple solutions you should use. It depends what works for the client, what works for whatever security he has, what works for the project. So it's about being flexible, but more importantly, I work with the client's accountant. Um, accountants give me most of my business. The accountants I have worked with then say, "Oh, look, I've got this client. Can you help me with this situation?" So I see an accountant a viable tool, but there are some accountants that are what I call compliance accountants, and that is, look, they're really good. The criteria you measure them is how much they save you in tax, which is not always the best criteria to measure an accountant by. Let me point this out. But that tends to be the traditional way.
Yeah.
And many accountants are happy doing that. They like to do what I call compliance work, get your tax returns done, fix up all the personal returns, do the stuff with the family trust, what's needed. But there are a group of accountants now that see themselves as strategic business advisors, and they tend to take a client and help them grow their business. So I suppose you've got to look at your accountant and say, is he here to do my numbers and fix up my tax returns and minimize my tax position? Or do I need someone that can help me grow and prosper, who understands my industry and my business and gives me the right advice? Because the specialist accountants mainly work with construction clients, many people's accountants. Construction might only be 10% of their customers. So how can they be across what's going on in that industry and understanding all the nuances that come with that?
Yeah. I mean, listening to you talk about that, it was a little bit like, the difference between your GP and specialist. Who do you want doing your brain surgery? Your GP?
That's right. Bring in a specialist. That's what I want. I've only got one brain.
Yes, I do have a personal brain surgeon. I've actually got 5 titanium plates in my noggin there after a boat accident. Yeah, and I don't even set the alarms off at the airport. It's a bit sad, but anyway, that's the story for another day. Someone listening to this, as I said, wants to explore the possibility to see whether what you do can help them and put a strategic plan into place to improve their, I guess, the financial health of the business. What's the process that you take them through? What can they expect?
Look, I'm a bit old-fashioned. I don't like to have, a 26 email conversation. I like to have a chat to someone on the telephone and talk to them so you get to understand each other. And then I get off my bum and get in my car and go and meet them, because face-to-face is just so important in understanding what a person's like. It's irreplaceable. Then once you've done that, when you do need to have discussions, you can set up Zoom or something like that works. But you've got to have those initial meetings face to face, so both of you get a feel for what you're about. Because I'm a bit old fashioned, and I'm sure many out there listening to this are as well. It's a bit to do with how it feels in your gut. All the analysts say it's not that valuable, but gee, it makes me feel better.
Yeah, I mean, in this day and age, we were just talking about it. We had a black belt session a little minute ago, and just talking about how important that is going to be, even in the building industry in the not too distant future, because it's like everything's going Captain, AI. Everything's going AI and automation and all of that, to save people time and all of that sort of stuff. But I think that I love what you're saying, because I just think that there is parts of every business, particularly a building business. I don't know so much about the commercial side of things, but definitely in the residential side of things, it's very personal. It's about relationships and it's about trust and all of that sort of stuff. And I just think it's a mistake to automate and use AI and things like that in the specific areas of business that are humanized. Like, humanize the crap out of the bits that are humanized, like with the human connection. All the other stuff, sure, you can automate it and outsource it and do all of that sort of stuff, but having a relationship and sitting face to face with people is just unparalleled, I think, in creating trust, which is so important in particularly in the building industry, for a project. It's a big thing. So having said that, like the podcast goes all over the country, do you only have clients in a specific geographical space, or are you happy to speak to people all over?
No, I work mainly Victoria. I do a fair bit of work in Queensland and South Australia. Have 1 or 2 clients in the West, but I don't have that many clients in New South Wales.
Hmm.
But,
How
with
bizarre is that?
yeah, I know. Well, look, I suppose I see New South Wales as a terribly competitive market. Victoria is home. South Australia and Queensland, I see those as great markets. And there seems to be a lot happening there. Like in Victoria, it's we're still dealing with the COVID hangover. If I'm not helping people manage and fund their business, I'm helping them fund their tax debt at the moment. Because I'm seeing, particularly in Victoria, because we were locked down for so long, enormous amount of tax debt is stymieing businesses, and the tax office is getting very hard in collecting that. So that also occupies a bit of my headspace at the moment.
Mm. You mentioned COVID, and that was a big speed hump for many building businesses. We're currently talking now on the 7th of May, 2025. People might see this conversation sometime down the track, but there are things happening in the United States with tariffs and, China not shipping, have all but cut off certain supplies to the United States and what have you. So I think there's going to be a little bit of shit hitting the fan. What's your perspective on how that might affect Australia's economy and particularly the residential building industry, if you've got an idea?
Well, I'm not all doom and gloom about that.
Good.
I tend to turn around and the old training is when there's change, there's opportunity. Think about China. China makes a lot of construction materials.
Mm.
There have been issues about quality and so forth, but if you were in China now and you manufacture, let's make a glass, okay, just to pick a commodity.
Yeah.
And you say, well, I've lost 15% of my market. Because let's remember that the US is not the biggest monster in the world. It is in many ways. But from China's perspective, it's only 15% of their exports. Right? So let's put that in perspective. And if you're a Chinese manufacturer, you're going to say, well, I've lost a market due to tariffs. Where's a similar market that I can go to the US? And it happens to be here.
Mm.
So all of a sudden you're going to find products out of China are going to be far cheaper and more available, just because they've got a surplus. They can't export to the States because prices precluded it.
Yeah.
And glass is perhaps not good, but for a Western society, for want of a better term, there are a lot of things you can do out of China. And for example, I have anyone who's looking at importing things out of China, I have a company that is owned by the Chinese government, I believe. I can't confirm that, but they provide incredibly generous trade terms. So, for example, if you can specify what you want out of China, and maybe it's tap fittings or something along those lines, you set up a set of specs, they'll go and source the product in China, and then basically give you between 90 and 180 days to pay for it.
Wow.
So this is a great opportunity for someone. And, I don't say if you have no importing expertise, it's something you should jump into, but they will give you those trade terms. So look, I spoke to a tap manufacturer here, and just using taps because they're a sort of almost a commodity, and say, well, oh, look, I like to use Australian product, but, I'm facing price pressures. Well, why don't you start importing a cheaper product from China? still have your high quality Australian or wherever else it's sourced from product, and have a dual product strategy where you have a low price, high price product. And particularly if you understand what you need, hence the tap manufacturer, the qualities and specs you want, getting those attractive trade terms out of China means, let's say you order the product, let's use, say, 180-day terms. Well, order and manufacture the product in 30 days, 30 days on the water, so 60 days gone. But I've got another 60 to 90 days available to me that I can get the product, sell it, get paid for it, so I can pay the bill at the end.
Yeah. No, it's good to hear that. A lot of people start panicking and get into the doom and gloom. There is always an opportunity, as they say, or something I believe in, is that there are no problems, just opportunities brilliantly disguised, and it's up to you to be the
and China's
sleuth.
a big one for us right now. I really think, I've had a few inquiries about doing something with China, and particularly from certain industries. And I've had a few, anything from electrical fittings to plumbing fitting, anything you want is available. And, it's about providing things at a price that's acceptable to the industry. You can make a reasonable profit if you're buying at a lower price point. And what we have is China with a great surplus at the moment.
Yeah. Martin Cattach, thank you very much for participating in the tool shed. That I think it was a bit over a year since we spoke.
I think it would be a good year.
Hopefully it won't be another year before we catch up again, because I think it's important to have discussions about finance options and just opening up people's minds as to how to use things differently, because there's a lot of talk about, good debt, bad debt. People don't understand the difference, and being able to have someone in their corner like yourself to help them to understand that you can use OPM, that's other people's money, to effectively, it's the good debt, it's not the bad debt. So really appreciate your time and your generosity sharing your knowledge on the podcast. It's been fantastic.
And look, anyone, my contact details, I assume, will be in the podcast, or
you assume correctly. We'll have all of the links in the
but look,
description and all that.
The best thing is just give me a call. I do not charge for advice on an hourly basis. Give me an understanding of what you're doing. I'll make some suggestions, and let's see if we can work from there. Because at the moment I'm in an interesting circumstance. It's across all industries. Half of my clients are booming, and the other half are in distress. And that distress is caused by tax debt and several other things. But there are things that can be done financially on all of those, particularly in distress. The new tools like small business restructure are absolutely brilliant for helping a business get back on track after it's been tied down with tax debt from COVID. So there are a lot of different things. It's, it's a lot easier when a client's booming to do things, but it's a lot more rewarding when things are a bit tight and you can show them another way and a way to move forward.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we talk about in Black Belt a lot, it's a philosophy in Black Belt, and it's Dan Sullivan's philosophy of ask who, not how, like trying to learn what you need to learn to take advantage of these opportunities. People just don't have the bandwidth to run their business and learn that stuff as well. Having someone like yourself in the corner, that's the who, instead of trying to learn how yourself. It's the smart way of going about it. So it's a good thing to do.
Thank you very much, Mick.
It's been wonderful having you on the show.
Thank you.
So that's it, folks, for this episode of the Tool Shed. As I mentioned, if you want to reach out to Martin, the contact details are in the description. Jump on the website, get the phone number, get on the phone and have a discussion and see if there's something that you can unpack that's going to help your business either come out of a challenging situation or prevent yourself from going into one. And before we bail, just a last reminder to click that link in the description for the Builders scorecard. It is 90 seconds that will deliver you some information that can help you improve your business very rapidly by focusing your attention in exactly the right spot, like a laser beam, which is very, very difficult for you to do on your own because you are so close to that coalface. So click the link and get that cool stuff delivered to you ASAP. We will be back with another episode of the ToolShed Podcast before you know it. My name is Mick Hawes from Builders Business Black Belt. That is all. I'm out. Bye for now.
You've been listening to the ToolShed. If this podcast struck a chord with you, make sure you spread the word by sharing it with your mates in the building industry. We love your help to make the building industry better for everyone involved.